But when I'm hitting the streets talking to bar managers and saying, hey, we'd love for you to put us on tap, because we didn't do any bottling. It was only draft. And so the education process was huge. I mean, you'd get questions like, well, is this in your basement, or how do you do this? I'm like, no, we actually have a real brewery. You can come and see it if you want.
Welcome to Tap and Table. I'm Ryan Hannigan. My co-host over here is Matthew Schniper from Side Dish. Our guests this week hail from Bristol Brewing, where we are recording. We have Mike and Amanda Bristol. Thanks for joining us.
Yeah,
Glad
thanks
to
for
be
having
here.
us.
Quick pause for sponsors.
What? Okay.
Yeah, okay. All right, quick pause.
Gotta pay the bills, right?
Yeah, we've got downtown Colorado Springs, the Ute at City Rock, and Pikes Peak State College.
Sweet. Lots this week.
Yeah.
Well, so we'll just jump into this.
Yeah.
You're on the Victorian hot seats over here.
Yeah.
And
The
you
funny
poured us
thing
beer.
Bring it on.
It feels like you guys are in our living room, because all of these chairs have been in our living room at one point or another.
And you have a Red Rocket sign in your living room.
And then we retire them to the
No, but I
brewery.
wish we did.
You should.
I wish we
We need to
did.
get you a Red Rocket sign for your living room. What are we drinking, by the way? You poured us a really delicious beer. Will you talk about that first?
Yeah, that's it's a Belgian Saison that we did a few years ago. We figured we might as well bring out something that we're not exactly known for, and so we brought out 3 Belgian style beers. I'm a big fan of Belgian style beers, the tradition, the technique, the love. So that's why we brought these out to start with, and then we'll see where it goes from here.
You should be known for Belgians. This is really, really good.
Yeah.
This is a great beer. And
Cheers.
They're
By the
definitely
way.
labors of love, because as you guys know from the industry, they're not exactly the hottest commodity these days, with IPAs and hazies and all that stuff. But we just love doing like a really great traditional style of beer and really diving into it. And I mean, these are re-fermented in the bottle, just like the Belgians do. They're in 750 milliliter bottles, cork finish. I mean, it's ridiculous how much work it is and for how little it sells, and we still love doing it, and we're going to keep doing it.
I think that's the hard thing with beer and production of beer, especially post-COVID, is that everyone wants it sooner, as quick as possible. So people are using the Kveki yeast. They're using things to speed up the process. And this is sort of hearkening back to the old days where it was this more natural process.
Yeah.
And letting the earth do the work for you, essentially.
Yeah, the
For
yeast is running the
carbonation.
show, and we're sort of just trying to keep it happy. you know,
as the beer experts, can you tell me why I'm getting this really lovely honey aroma and honey flavor? And there's not honey in there. It's from the yeast, basically.
From the yeast. It's a traditional Saison yeast from Belgium, and that definitely brings out that honey, a little bit of spice. I mean, it's one of those beers that doesn't have any non-traditional ingredients in it. There is no spice. There's no flower petals. There's no, anything, honey. But it's just, they're fun beers to do.
Yeah. Now, if someone's listening to this and thinking, I want to drink that, I'm guessing they can't have this
We
one.
do have bottles of the Saison here in the pub.
You do?
Yes.
Okay.
So we do have that, and so 2 of the 3 beers that we brought out now are available. 1 is sold out. So
Okay. Good to know. All right. Ryan, you've got first.
I got first dibs
Real
on questions.
Yeah.
So, biggest question, this year is your 30th anniversary, which is a huge milestone for any brewery. You look at breweries across the U.S. are closing after a couple of years or struggling, and to make it 30 years is a huge accomplishment. So the question is, what has changed in like your view of owning a brewery versus when you opened up on Forge Road? How has your perspective on owning a brewery changed?
that's a great question. Probably the better question is what hasn't changed, but no.
That's the flip side of it.
No, I can start, but I'm sure Amanda will have opinions too. But I think the one thing that hasn't changed, maybe I'll start there. The one thing that haven't changed is still the love of beer and the sort of this idea that we can make these traditional beers that from around the world, and as you guys know, and we get knocked for it sometimes, I'm a very traditionalist when it comes to beers. I mean, I don't. We do stuff that's on the fringes, certainly, but it's not my go-to beers are always a really well-crafted style of a traditional beer. It's not putting breakfast cereal in a beer. It's not. Yeah, I know.
Ryan's favorite.
And
Bring me Fruity Pebbles.
So, and it's not to
Which
say
is
that
okay.
we're not trying to. Yeah, nothing wrong with Fruity Pebble beer.
And it's
Actually,
true,
I'm going to
there
raise
is
my
a
hand and say
place
I
for
don't
it.
want to drink a Fruity Pebble beer. I'll go on record for it. I'm good. I'm good without that.
And sometimes we've gotten knocked over the years, because we don't follow every little trend that goes. But anyway, so that I'm getting a little off track, but
Maybe that's
the
why you're
love of
around
beer-
after 30 years, though. You didn't follow every little trend.
I mean, I hope so. I mean, I hope that's part of the reason.
Well, that is one thing that hasn't changed over the years, actually, is because when we first started, well, it wasn't right when we first started, but maybe a couple years in, fruit beers became really, really big. And I just remember Mike being like, I'm not brewing a fruit beer. We're not doing that. That's not real beer. And they were really popular for a while. Raspberry wheat and, a lot of different kinds like that, which are like nothing compared to what's happening today. But, I don't know. I would say that even from our, the days when we were together and we were home brewing and dumpster diving for Grolsch bottles to, bottle the beer. And we would go to this bar in St. Augustine, Florida, that specialized in imported beer, which was really cool back then, But I think,
This would have been 1992.
yeah.
Yeah.
And I think one of the things was we really, really did value the heritage. That was just so huge for us. And like you said, all over the world, not just England, not just Germany or whatever, but Belgium, all the different styles that have come up from the different areas and the different styles, it's just, we just loved being a part of that. We loved trying these things and of course you have to remember too that we were coming out of, in college, I went to University of Georgia, it was Miller Lite. If you could get Coors Light, it was so exciting because Coors was a Colorado beer, And, so this world just opened up. And we started with, of course, those imports at this place, but then, of course, craft came along and we were sold.
I'm very interested in those early years too. Like it's your 30th anniversary. If I'm correct, you're the second oldest brewery, right behind Phantom, right?
Yeah,
And I know
6
we
months, I
talked
think.
about Judge Baldwin's sort of predated that a little, but they were using extracts or whatever. And
They've been in and out. They really
Yeah.
haven't been.
it's really
consistent.
like
That's the hardest part.
Historically, we would say it's Phantom, then Bristol, a few months apart.
Well, actually,
Or-
About 6 months apart.
The
Yeah.
Pikes Peak Brewery, the
original
original
one.
Pikes Peak Brewery, they were before Phantom, weren't they, Mike?
Were they?
Yeah, they started and then they.
Because Phantom
I
started.
think
a
when
few
they
months-
went out of business, maybe 98, maybe.
I'd have to
think
look.
so.
I've got a list
Yeah.
of all the ones that
Yeah.
have opened and closed since
So the-
1990.
Do you really? I would
do.
love to see that. That would be so fun.
And it's got everything
I
from
mean, not that places
from
have closed.
Arctic to
Yeah.
short-lived ones like 1876 that was only around for 4 months.
There was a place called
a
Hops
couple
out
years
on
ago.
Academy in the early
That's
days.
right. Yeah.
Yep.
That was a chain.
Yeah.
And then the
Back
one that
alley.
was Storm Brewed, the beer that was.
Oh yeah,
Oh,
downtown.
Thunder Ridge.
Thunder Ridge.
Thunder
Thunder
yeah.
But they
Ridge,
couldn't do
where,
what they
it's
were.
where the mansion is now.
Yeah.
I just
Yeah.
remember their big tagline was "Storm Brewed" because
You
they
can
would
still-
get their fermenters were on the roof or something. Do you remember?
I think they
that?
were trying to do water catchment, but I thought it didn't work. I thought they got like the city wouldn't let them do it.
They were only around for 11 months.
Okay.
If that gives you any idea about all of that, and then it turned into Rum Bay after that
Yeah.
point.
Well, how about this? Bristol is the second oldest continuous brewery in Colorado Springs currently operating.
Yes. Yes.
And I'm really curious
Cheers.
about at that era, what this scene was like. Like we know it today with 30 something breweries and all these things we just talked about, all these trends have come and gone. But what's happening in 93 in Colorado Springs when you get here?
Yeah, interestingly, when we chose Colorado Springs, we were still living in Florida. I grew up in Fort Collins, so obviously we were familiar with kind of the Colorado scene. And so we were actually, I remember kind of being bummed out that when I heard that this Pikes Peak Brewing, which is not the same Pikes Peak Brewing now, but I'm like, oh, somebody beat us to the punch, right? And then I'm like, well, that doesn't, I mean, that we can still do this,
It's a big
right?
town.
And the interesting thing is, we started with a totally different model than Phantom too. So we started as a package. I mean, it was all draft. There was no food. Back then you didn't have tasting rooms. You couldn't come and hang out and drink beer at the brewery. I mean, you could,
Although
but it wasn't a
people did
thing.
hang out at our little
Yeah.
industrial.
So the biggest thing I think was education. So where Phantom had the restaurant to bring people in, which was great. It was great for us that people were getting exposed to craft beer in this town through Phantom. I mean, that was wonderful. That was a huge asset. But when I'm hitting the streets talking to bar managers and saying, "Hey, we'd love for you to put us on tap," because we didn't do any bottling; it was only draft, and so the education process was huge. I mean, you'd get questions like, "Well, is this in your basement, or how do you do this?" I'm like,
Didn't the bar
"No,
manager-
we actually have a real brewery. You can come and see it if you want."
I feel like it was the bar manager at the Ritz specifically that literally asked you that.
I don't remember which one it was. So it was not only sort of this education of what do you mean you're a brewery, because at that point a brewery was Coors, Anheuser-Busch.
Big
New
guys.
Belgium had started, but they weren't. I don't think New Belgium was even available in Colorado Springs back then. If they were very, very newly available. So part of it was just this idea that yes, this is a thing. Like you can start a brewery on a smaller scale, and you don't have to go national, and you can do it locally. And it's happened in Europe for a long time. And that was part of the selling point, was we believe in local beer. And then just the education on the style too. I mean, Red Rocket, we started with Laughing Lab and Red Rocket. And Red Rocket was just too hoppy for most people, and it was
is so
a
funny,
pale ale.
Thinking about that
Right.
today, you're like, what?
Yeah.
Well, I would be behind our little counter that I was telling you that Mike's cousins and his brother built, for us to have at the original brewery. And
To sell growlers, because
Yeah,
that
all I was
was the
doing was
only way to
selling
get the beer
growlers.
other than at a restaurant or a bar.
selling growlers and also giving away samples, but they could be pint sized. So people would come in for these samples, a pint of beer that was just a sample.
Mostly the people that worked in the same industrial
Yeah,
park.
that's right. But when
It's a
they
free pint of beer. That's great.
but when they would taste Laughing Lab and Red Rocket, they would literally go, "Oh, that's bitter," about Red Rocket, and I'd be like, "Well," because we had agreed we weren't going to use the word bitter. We were going to say, "Well, it's just sort of got a little kick to it," and we were like trying so hard to, and we had like a newspaper clipping taped to the. And it was like some article that had appeared in some newspaper, and I mean, we were just trying to kind of. Well, like Mike says, educate and just like say, this is not bitter. This is just a different flavor than you're used to. That's the hops you're tasting. I mean, it was
Yeah.
really interesting.
And Matt's trying it's an amber, right?
No,
is it
it's a pale ale.
It was
pale
pale
ale.
ale,
yeah.
But it was
It was
hoppy-
patterned
I get
after.
everything
It was patterned after Sierra Nevada Pale Ale, Anchor. Liberty was a little hoppier.
But just the idea of a hoppy pale ale.
Right.
Yeah.
People are used to the hops, or not even thinking the hops are there.
Right.
With
Yeah.
the macro
And
stuff.
and people that didn't know the style, which
And
was
nobody-
most of them, thought it meant that it was a light beer because it was pale. It was a pale ale.
And so
and
then
so
they
there
get
was
this
lots of
amber,
confusion.
Yeah.
Garnet ruby red almost color, and they're like, "What is
And nobody
this?"
knew what a Scottish ale was either. So Laughing Lab was a weird deal, and even craft brewers weren't doing Scottish ales. So that was an odd one, and it was darker in color, so it scared people. So it was just a matter of education. I mean, we knew that the only way this was going to work is to literally get people to taste the beer one person at a time. And I can't tell you how many hours I spent, going up and down Tejon after we did get those first few tap lines and buying people beers, talking to them.
Wow.
Just to get them to try the beer. And that, and as an industry, that's what was happening.
Everywhere.
Outside of in other markets as well. But
What was the flagship lineup? What did you open with, and did beers come on? Or you opened with like 5 or 6?
no,
we just
Red
opened with
Rocket
those two.
and Laughing Lab.
Rocket,
Those are
Lab.
the only two.
And
Yeah.
we liked Red Rocket the best between the two because we like hops, right? And we were like, oh, Red Rocket's going to take off. It's going to be the one. But Laughing Lab just took off, and it was, I think, because it's dark, but it's very smooth, and people it appealed to their palates more because people just weren't ready for hops.
I think it's the dog label. People just love
Well,
dogs.
there's
Well,
a little
that
bit
didn't
of
hurt.
that.
That
They'll
didn't hurt.
buy it the first time for the dog, but
Right.
then if they don't like it, they're not going to keep
But
buying
all those GABF medals were not for the label.
right.
So
No, when did you have so many beers now that are go-tos for so many people that live in this city, like, Beehive, Warlock. When did those next ones come on? I'm just curious how your flagship lineup grew. Was that steady every couple of years you'd had one, or did you have a year where you just popped on a bunch and went with it?
It wasn't. I wouldn't say it was very planned. It was sort of like, oh, what'd be fun is to do this. Let's do this.
Seasonal.
And
It was like
we started with Beehive as a seasonal beer.
Actually, it was Warlock. Sorry.
No, I'm saying that the start of Beehive was as a seasonal beer, and then it was very well received. So we didn't pull it at the end of the summer.
Right.
We said,
Okay.
okay, this
And that's
is
how
now
a lot of places will do
this
it.
is now a flagship.
Yeah.
Warlock was always designed as a seasonal, and it stayed a seasonal. And Warlock was winter of 1995, I believe. So it's been around for a long time.
Yeah.
It was probably even before Christmas, or was it after the year turned? But yeah, that was our very first seasonal beer, because we were really in, again, that's the way that you see it around the world, seasonal drinking, and
Totally.
it was really exciting to bring Warlock out and to say.
It was also damn frightening. I mean, you're at 1995, and we're brewing an oatmeal stout that you can't see through. It's dark. It's rich. It's not Guinness.
Right.
It's bigger, rounder, bolder. And I mean, I specifically remember being in the brewery, and we worked long hours back then. And I don't know what crazy time at night it was, but I was finishing up. I'm turning the lights off, and I look at this fermenter that has 525 gallons of Winter Warlock in it. And I just remember thinking, God, I hope I'm not the only one that likes this. Because I didn't know if it would sell or not. I mean, it was a leap of faith that people would get into it. And as it's turned out, it's been a fantastic, I mean, it's I don't know what you'd call it. It's not a flagship, but it is well received year after
It's
year.
a fan favorite is what
Yeah.
it is.
It's an iconic beer.
That sort of leads me to my next question. So, you guys now, Bristol now is, you're the elder statesman of the Colorado Springs
Thank
Brewing.
you for changing old to elder.
The old elder statesman of the Colorado Springs brewing industry. But was there a point in your early years where you realized, oh, this is actually going to work?
Oh yeah. So when you
Took a little while.
when you ask that first question, sort of what perspective has changed, I think that's one of the things that's changed. I mean, we started, and I was 29, she was 28. We had left good jobs.
Well, I actually kept mine. So
Well,
that
you
we
worked
could have some
freelance, yeah.
income.
But and we just thought, you know what? Let's just give this a go, and if we can make a living and keep this thing rolling for 4 or 5 years, then it'll be a great adventure, And so that perspective has changed over the years. Now we look at it when we're investing in equipment or we're investing in people or spaces like this. I mean, we try to think of the long term, generational almost. So that has been a big shift.
One thing, I think all of us have an empty glass now.
Yeah,
Should we
that
start
sounds
on
good.
I
beer
was gonna-
two?
Yeah, thank you.
And
Okay, keep talking. I'm going to
yeah.
open this.
by the way, you mentioned the space we're in. So we are at Ivy Wild right now. We're right inside the front door.
Yeah, we're
We
in the
call
lab
this
lounge.
The lab
That's right.
lounge. Okay. So if you want to see where we are and have a beer here sometime, it's open to the public.
Yes.
And
Join us anytime.
Place to hang out.
yeah,
Every time I come through here, there's usually a bunch of people in here because it's a comfy spot.
yeah.
Like it's not the tap room itself is really comfortable, but it's more of a bar and seating, and then Wildcat's just seating, and this is more like a loungy, bougie, almost dark, dimly
private,
lit,
yeah.
A
nice
little more
sort of
cozy
private.
in
Yeah,
here,
it's,
yeah.
it's almost like your grandfather's den type area.
Yeah.
Beer signs on the wall, the whole shebang. But
Good point. Yeah.
Yeah. And while we're talking about Ivy Wild too, we were going to ask about, before when you
pass
were a
that.
brew pub versus now when you have a food component, what's that like? How has that changed things for Bristol having now you have the Spark barbecue truck, but other considerations now that you have to dabble in food as we
Well,
actually have a
just-
cheese board
Well,
in front
it's
of
not
us.
as fun.
It just makes
Not as fun.
makes it more complicated.
Yeah.
But I think for us, our business is really, it's almost 3 businesses I mean, we view it as 3 businesses under one, just the Bristol part. Now, you add Ivy Wild, it's multiple layers. But so we have, I mean, brewing at its core is a production operation. It's a manufacturing. I mean, it's a glorious manufacturing process, but it's still that. So that's sort of the core of what we do, and the distribution and the bottles and cans and draft throughout the state, and that's kind of one business. And then the pub is a totally different beast as far as the kind of talent that you need for your employees are different. It's a wonderful complement because it gives people an opportunity to sort of, I think the way Amanda used to say it, which I love, is sort of have the beer in its own habitat, or different variations of that.
Beer enjoying a beer in its natural
habitat. Yeah. So it certainly is. They work together, and then the Spark Barbecue is just sort of an extension of that. I mean, we're believers in beer brings people together, and beer's not really a solitary thing. It's kind of people celebrating or talking, or the reason we don't have TVs in here, and just try to get people to kind of sit around, have a beer, and communicate with each other. And we felt like barbecue is a little bit of an extension of that. It's generally something that's shared. It's you think about your backyard barbecue and everybody gathering around and grabbing the ribs and that kind of stuff. That, and then, I mean, selfishly, I love barbecue, and interestingly,
I can't disagree.
and interestingly, barbecue has some common. I mean, as a food, as a something that you're making, it also requires a lot of patience, a lot of attention to detail, the temperatures. I mean, there's actually quite a few crossovers. I mean, nothing we do on the beer side is instantaneous, and when you're doing barbecue, you don't just say, "Oh, we're running out. Let's do another brisket for the next hour," right? I mean, you're really making a commitment. So
right. I think you were about to say that it was a food group, and I agree. It is a food group.
By the way, what are we drinking this time?
This is the Belgian Double. So we brewed this. The first time we brewed this was actually in celebration of our 6,000th batch.
Yes.
Batch 6,000.
B6000.
This is not that version of it. But again, it's just same sort of thing, traditional Belgian. It's got more
totally different flavors.
Yeah,
like,
more caramel, different yeast than
deeper.
the Saison.
Cheers, by the way.
Cheers.
Bottle conditioned again, so cheers.
High five. Cheers.
Yeah.
So speaking of beer, one of the tough things, just for a brewery is the raw ingredients. How have the Bristol beers changed over the last 30 years, just due to hops, malt, different brewing systems? Like, what have you had to sort of tweak and deal with in terms of all that?
Oh yeah, that's sort of an ongoing challenge, really. I mean, I joke about it, but when you compare us with like winemakers, for instance, I mean, it's totally fine for a winemaker to say, "Oh, it wasn't a great year," or "This was a great year." But as a beer maker, you can't do that. You can't say, "Oh, I'm sorry, this year the Laughing Lab's just not quite as good as it was last year." But we're still dealing with this.
Please still buy it.
Right. We're still dealing with the same challenges with the raw materials, right? I mean, our barley is still coming out of the ground just like grapes, and it comes out better some years based on rain and temperatures. And I mean, it's a whole science to it. But we have to adjust based on what we're getting in order to make the same product each time. And so that, year to year, the barley is probably the biggest one. We're fortunate that we have a really nice brew system that we can make those modifications and changes to. There have been a couple of years that have been pretty rough on the barley thing. We also have the advantage a little bit of we're not we're not a large player in the barley industry. I mean, we're not New Belgium, we're not Sam Adams, but we do have enough volume that we can sort of define our specifications and get. Once we dial it in, we know we're going to get the same lot every time. So it's not like just calling up and you're going to get whatever. So that's kind of nice. Same with hops. We're able to select particular hops and things like that. So there are some advantages to having a little bit of scale.
In terms of brew systems, what size did you have at Forge? What would you start out on?
Well, interestingly, we started out with a 20 hectoliter system, which is 17 barrels, and it's the system that we used until we moved here in 2013.
It's the one you had across the street on table.
Now, it was highly modified by the time it moved over there. We had pimped it out a little bit, I guess I could say, and it was we had made it a lot more efficient, but it was the same system.
And in our last episode, we had chatted with Joe Coleman, and he alluded to some stories of you trying to bring in equipment into that building. Did you have any challenge? Can you tell us some stories of challenges with? I think there might have been like holes in the roof, or
that was actually that was when we were moving over here. So I look back and I think, man, I don't think I ever want to try to do that again. But to take a brewery that was putting out close to 10,000 barrels a year over there, and then bring it over here. As far as some of the equipment came over, some was new. But one of the things that we did bring over was the grain silo. And the grain silo
that's what it
was being lifted by the crane to load up to come over here. And right as it's swinging over the roof of the building, the operator had not set his... I don't know exactly what happened, but literally the parking lot that he was set on, it was a hot day, and it
just sunk.
It sunk, and the whole thing went into the roof.
So it was an inadvertent hole in the roof.
Yes. Well, there's also a different story, which is the intentional hole in the roof too.
Okay. So that might have been the one that Joe was talking about.
That might have been the one he was talking about. So when we were maxed out over there when we were building this place. And so I thought, well, I want to increase our capacity over there. So what I did is I ended up buying 2 fermenters that were ridiculously large for that system that I knew were going to come over here. We eventually moved them over here. In fact, they're still out there. But the roof wouldn't handle it, so we cut out a section of the roof and dropped them in with crane. I still have pictures of this. I mean, these crane guys... Well, these crane guys were good. The other crane guys I questioned, but these guys, I mean,
I want to know how the insurance call went. Like, who fields that? They're like, I'm sorry, could you say that? What happened again? Exactly. You dropped a what? What? Like,
luckily, we weren't in production because it happened right over the bottling line. So luckily, there was nobody working in there.
But we were watching from over here. Me and I think Matt Ward, who you knew Matt.
Yeah.
We were kind of like, what?
That doesn't look good.
That does not look good.
Like, let's go home early today. Yeah. Let's leave now.
I'm like,
So we drop these fermenters in, and then we build this little
alcove over them.
It's like a doghouse or something over it. So when you're in the brewery, you see these fermenters, but you only see to the roof level, and then they go up higher than that.
That's like every other major brewery.
And there's certainly. A lot of breweries do similar things, but they design it that way. They don't come in after the fact and say, let's just cut a hole in the roof. But we knew it was only going to be for 9 months. So it didn't make sense to put a big structural rack and everything. And we just dropped them in, set them on the ground, and went from there. So
just called it good.
Yeah.
All right.
Should we take a quick sponsor break?
Sure.
All right. Great.
Downtown Colorado Springs, home of the largest concentration of independent restaurants in Southern Colorado, is proud to sponsor Tap&Table and support the passionate individuals who make the food and beverage industry a cultural highlight in our lives. With more than 140 restaurants, cafes, bars, breweries, and coffee shops within its boundaries, downtown Colorado Springs has the perfect something to satisfy any craving. Find a complete list of where to dine and drink at downtowncs.com.
I'm personally thrilled to have the Ute Restaurant sponsor this episode of Tap&Table. Why? Because I'm a member at City Rock Climbing Gym, where the Ute is located. I love that the Ute has healthy house-made items like salads, wraps, and two of my personal favorites, the Thai peanut Buddha bowl and a turmeric quinoa black bean bowl. There's also hearty pastas, flatbread pizzas, Cuban sliders, and even a great customizable ramen bowl. The Ute also hosts over 50 of the finest craft beers on a constantly rotating menu. Me, I'm always working my way through the IPAs for brands like Cerebral and Outer Range. I dig that I can show up at the bar with climbing chalk still on my clothes because of the casual atmosphere. It's a comfortable space, rich with character, even kid-friendly, and you don't have to climb to enjoy the eatery. Check out the Ute restaurant inside City Rock at 21 North Nevada Avenue next time you're downtown. They're open from 4 to 10 p.m., Mondays through Fridays. Plus, you just might see me there.
On Saturday, March 9th, join Pikes Peak State College in the Broadmoor's Cheyenne Lodge for the 2024 Chef Henry Trujillo Memorial Scholarship Soiree. This experience takes you across the decades of Chef Trujillo's life to delight your palate, support future culinary artists, and experience gourmet flavors from regional food producers paired with local beers and Colorado wines. Attend, cherish, and uplift. We're honoring Chef Trujillo's spirit, so be part of it. Tickets are $75. You can RSVP through the link in the show notes or head to pikespeak.edu/Trujillo. That's TRUJILLO. See you there.
And we're back. That was
Great.
so quick.
Magic of editing.
We're going to work that out.
Well done.
I mean, yeah, it wasn't planned. It just happened naturally. Ryan, do you have another question?
So I actually, it's just a funny thing, talking about, the beers that Bristol makes, very sort of steeped in tradition. Mike, you and I had a conversation on the patio, I would say 4 or 5 years ago, maybe, where I think you swore to me you wouldn't make a hazy IPA.
Oh,
And I think I have it on.
that's
I think I have it
good.
on audio.
Wow.
I think I have an audio recording of it.
That's good.
And
And that could be. I mean, what I try to say is I never say never.
And I think you had some caveats on there as well. But
right now, I'm not
that's my
interested.
only poking thing of you.
I love
Wait,
it.
so never say never. That means there is chance for a Fruity Pebbles beer after all.
I mean, I never say
That's
never.
not what people want.
I
though.
try not to say. I try not to say.
They know
never.
what people want.
I love
It has
a
3
good
X's in it.
hazy. So.
Okay, back to the hazy.
Yeah, I mean the whole hazy craze. Again, as I've said before, and we get knocked for this, but we don't follow like each and every trend, and we have avoided going down some real rabbit holes by doing that, and we can all glitter beer comes to mind, but there's a lot of them. But
Glitter beer is so good.
Another
though.
favorite?
It adds so much flavor to it.
but yeah, I wasn't. I mean, when you're a traditional brewer,
Oh, I know.
you spend an amazing amount of time trying to make sure that the beer does look beautiful and is clear, and so it's that whole thing just turned everything upside down. And so, as a brewer, and I also have my background is in engineering, that whole thing was just like, this is just weird. I've worked so hard not to have haze in the beer, and now you want me to do it. But that being said, once we realized that this was something that people wanted, and we had enough time to figure out how do we do it our way, and how do we do it with something that we're proud of. So don't get me wrong, I'm extremely proud of our hazy.
I know. I'm just giving you a hard time about it.
But I'll also tell you that's not my favorite style. A hazy is like if I go into a brewery, that's generally not the first beer I'm going to try.
What is the first beer you try?
They have a Pilsner, I'll try a Pilsner, and that's because I love Pilsners, and I can also tell what the rest of the beers are going to taste like by tasting their Pilsner.
Taste the clean beer first, right?
That's just a hard beer to make well. And so as a brewer, if they can nail the Pilsner, then the rest are going to be fine. It's a lot harder to make than most of the other ones.
That's a great rule of thumb. That's a good tip for people. Like try the Pilsner first and then see how it goes.
For me, it is, yeah.
That's how I go about going to beer festivals these days. Is
Anything
I
left
will.
from
I
that
think
one?
it might be gone. I might have.
No,
I might have
we got
cashed
another
it.
one.
Okay.
I might have. In the March, and I seek out the hard to brew beers versus the beers that just have random crazy ingredients in it.
Right.
Because you could throw tons of hops, tons of adjuncts at something to fix quote unquote fix something.
Right.
But if you can't brew a clean, clear Kolsch or Pilsner,
Right.
Yeah, Kolsch is
there's
another
other
good
things
example.
that are wrong.
Speaking of March and events, something else important is coming back this year.
Yeah.
It is. Could you tell us about it, Amanda?
Well,
Okay.
it's our Firkenfest, which you've always been so great about Firkenfest and been a big supporter of it.
I'll say I'm a supporter, but I'm also
Thank you.
I've been angry when it hasn't happened. So.
Yeah, well, we know. Don't worry.
I know.
We're aware.
Courtney probably passes that.
We're
on.
aware of that.
What happened? Let
I
the readers
just-
in on this.
No, I don't know. I
He just makes himself known whether that
I'm
that,
very
hey,
vocal
why aren't you
about
guys
my
having it?
displeasure.
But I appreciate that because I mean,
An honest critic.
So the really question is that historically Firkin has been a gathering of brewers around like the annual like
Brewers
guild
Guild
meeting.
yeah.
And so
And well,
I
the
know that most of the
conference.
guild stuff, like their membership, has gone online. There's less like actual in-person meetings. So that was part of the impetus for it like not happening for
Well,
a year or two.
One of the things too was that coming out of COVID, I mean, breweries, as you guys know, I mean, restaurants as well. But manpower, people power, I should say.
Yeah, we didn't think we could get people to come out right after.
There was
COVID.
a lot of the
like
breweries
most people
didn't
didn't even
have-
they didn't have an event staff because there wasn't events for 2
Let
years.
me back it up too. For someone who's watching who doesn't know, what is a Firkin? How does this work? How old is this event? What should people expect this year? Give us the really quick 101. Like, I don't know anything about beer. What are they talking about right now?
Yeah, that's
Good
a great
point.
question.
Sorry.
Firkin is
That's my job. I represent the everyman.
What this is,
actual
Matt
word-
doesn't know what this is, so he's
Yeah,
asking.
like I don't even know what's a
The
Firkin.
viewers will want to know.
Yeah, no,
the
no.
actual
yeah.
word firkin is an English measurement for a style, a particular
Size.
style of cask. So it's a size measurement. So you had, and there's some great terms in the British vernacular. You've got a hogshead and a firkin and a pin, and so the firkin is smaller than a regular U.S. keg, a half barrel keg, and so that kind of became the term is more than just the size of it. And so the idea, and we started it. Do you remember the year we started it?
Well, it's I don't have my phone, but it's the 15th annual,
It was like halfway through.
something like
Something
that.
like that.
Yeah.
I don't know, but that was
So-
something you kind of started.
Yeah. So, well, one of the things, if you go to England and you drink traditional cask ale on the hand pump,
Which
that's
is a
generally pulled out
Warmer
of a
beer
firkin.
for one, right?
Yeah, usually it's a little bit warmer. It's
But you
pulled
don't
on
care
a
'cause it
firkin.
tastes so good.
All
Right.
all the carbonation, there's no forced CO2 into it.
Right.
And so that's where I got into the whole firkin thing, was to try to mimic this English style of making it. And so when it started, it was sort of about a pale ale with dry hops in the firkin and all of this stuff. But as craft brewers are, as they do, they're like, wait, you mean we have this thing we can put beer in and it's got a bung in it, and then we can put whatever else we want in there? And so then it just became
A bung being the opening that's has a
then it
stopper.
just became, hey, this is a free for all, which was awesome. I mean, I don't have any problem with that. I mean, I'm still a traditional cask guy,
Right.
But the creativity
but
is
yeah. So
cool.
Well, like,
really
what's
cool.
some examples?
It's probably
like,
the
I
only
think-
time you'll see Oreos in a beer
right.
in Bristol.
Like you got like a Coke,
That's right.
yeah,
like dried coconut. What are other things that people will do? What are
there's a
common
lot
ones?
of-
What have you been eating in Van Leeuwen ice
Oh,
cream?
the weird
Yeah,
stuff. Yeah,
anything that
Anything.
you
like
can imagine.
macaroni and cheese and
Yeah,
like
it's
Yeah,
going,
gross
that's
stuff.
going in beer.
Well, it's not going to be mac and cheese.
well, you
yeah.
never know. Don't
It could be.
Don't
It could
ride
be.
it out. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
possible.
I don't know, have you ever seen Savory?
So you basically
Why
you had
not?
this idea to do this, and then you
Don't give any-
invited a bunch of friends over to do the same. Like other breweries come in and bring theirs,
Yeah.
and the public then can walk around and try all these interesting beers.
Yeah.
I mean,
And what's
Everyone
really cool
gets their
about them,
chance to
what's
create
really cool about
something.
them is that these beers only exist in this single firkin. So whatever it is you've done to it is only in this firkin.
That's it.
So it's not a whole batch. It's not 500 gallons. It's not 1,000 gallons. So whatever you're tasting out of that cask, that firkin, is only going to be in that. So
Right.
that and it's the same really with a traditional English ale too, but it also expanded to just be all kinds of different stuff. So, I mean, my personal favorite is a great IPA dry hopped in a cask. I think that's just wonderful. But again, I mean, it's all over the board, and it showcases a brewer's sort of creativity without having to commit to a full batch of something.
Right.
Really nutty.
And then really quick too, what's the date on it this year? Do you have that off
March
the top?
2nd.
March 2nd. And
Thank
it's
you.
where is it this year? It's here?
Here, yeah.
It's going to be in the gym this
Yeah,
year.
it's going to be in the gym.
And what time? Do we know the time?
Early afternoon. but you
Afternoon.
can go,
It's
Okay.
on March 2nd. You
All
want
right.
to just block the whole
Information
day
is
out.
Yeah.
Like,
at Bristol's Facebook
Bristol.
or
Yeah.
Insta.
Yeah,
or
there's a Facebook
website.
event.
Brewery.com or Facebook, any of
And
those.
the VIP tickets are already sold out. We're trying to kind of we made it's a little bit of more of an intimate festival this year, and the gym can only fit so many. You know, Chris said no more festivals in the brew house, so that's
Well,
one of the reasons why we
this
moved to the
particular
gym.
Too
one,
bad.
this particular one is a challenge because we did have.
Yeah,
So to make a good firkin takes. There's been a lot of education with other brewers about how to do. In fact, I actually wrote a blog post on the Brewers Guild site to be like, hey, this is the way to do a firkin. But you know, because you get carbonation going in there, and there's all kinds of factors. And yeah, I think the last straw was when someone tapped a firkin and it shot up to the ceiling, which is
it kind of exploded.
25 feet and sprayed beer all over, and we're just like, yeah, maybe not in the brewery next.
It's a lot of cleanup.
Yeah.
A lot of cleaning. I mean, historically, back over across the street at on the Tejon
we're
Street
all-
one, it was shoulder to shoulder.
We're all crammed in the warehouse.
Racks of
Yeah.
firkins on the
Yep.
wall. Back in those days, I think all of the leftover beer got distilled down into like a white spirit at some point.
Yeah.
I think John Schneider might have
Yeah, that
had
could be a
that
little
up.
road.
that
thing,
sounds-
little
Yeah,
side,
if you didn't know about that,
little
then
side
well, then here
hustle
you
with John's.
I wouldn't say I didn't know about it. It was not sanctioned
I
because
think
we are
he
not
was-
licensed
Oh
to
no,
distill.
I think he was making parts cleaners. What
Probably
it was.
at
It
his-
wasn't. It
at
wasn't.
his-
It wasn't a distilled spirit for.
Right.
Probably in his
Indulging.
basement.
Yeah.
So that's Firkin. Are there any other events coming up this year, 2024, for Bristol? Anything else big for your 30th, whether that's, monthly happy hours or
Right.
parties
Are you
or
doing
whatever?
a big anniversary party?
We are
Yeah.
doing a big
What else is
anniversary
happening?
party. That's going to be June 15th.
Okay.
Noon to 5. And we kind of the idea, and we were sitting around brainstorming about it, and we were just like, what this needs to be is just this kind of backyard barbecue picnic kind of, let's just all enjoy some time together outside. Of course, if it rains, we'll move it inside, as we did for our 25th. But we're going to have live music. We're going to have games. We're going to have Josh and John's ice cream truck, which is always fun because they started way back when also. Before us, of course. But photo booth.
Any special beer releases that you'll
There's going
do?
to be 2 beer releases that day. I think will be, and Mike can speak to this more than I can, but I think there'll be some others throughout the year that are all going to be surprises.
Yeah, we're gonna do some stuff along the way, but it's not like on a particular date.
And during the
In fact, we're drinking the Belgian styles now. One of the ones that I want to do is one of the beers I love making that we haven't had it for a while is a Belgian triple was in the same series.
Okay.
So that's in the works.
Great time to tell us what are we drinking, because I'm really
Oh,
enjoying
this is a
But
quad.
let me just really quick
Quad.
say,
This
before
is
we
even further
leave the
above
30th
that.
anniversary, we're going to do, Mike and I are going to bartend that day for part of the day, and we're going to do 94-cent beers part of the day. And so
Cool.
just like little things like that. But
Okay.
that's that event.
We will on both of our newsletters. We will give a lot more information as
Closer to the date.
that comes
Yeah.
up.
Yeah.
That's a long ways out for even them to have specific
Hey,
information.
mark your calendars right
For sure.
now, people.
I do want to
Not that
ask
hard.
about one specific beer that is you know exactly
I
which
know
one
what's
it is
coming,
now.
yeah. Yes.
I don't know what's coming. What
I
did you
think
just
you
laugh
do.
at?
But you'll enjoy this.
Okay.
So I talked to the brewer that was working for you at the time, who helped.
I read that.
Idealize this beer. It's been a big fan favorite. I know you've had it behind the bar every once in a while when you find cases randomly hidden in the brew house. Triple X Warlock.
Okay.
It takes a lot to brew it. Is there any chance that maybe a 30th anniversary version might appear? Please?
I can neither confirm
Can I get on my knees
nor
in
deny.
bed?
Wow. Did you hear the begging in his voice, though?
it's-
Don't you feel bad? If you don't do it, you're going to make Ryan cry.
No, I love what a
I
beer
would like
fan
to.
you are. It's really fun.
But I can't commit to it.
It's a huge beer.
Yeah.
So essentially, Matt, for you and for the viewers that maybe don't know, this is like a beer that was inspired by Sam Adams Triple Bock,
Okay.
which is this massive 18-20% alcohol beer, naturally fermented. So not an ice box. They're not freezing it. They're not freeze distilling it. This is a naturally fermented high alcohol beer. And Bristol did it when
Which
Jason
is very
Yester was
very
I've seen a
difficult to
bottle.
do.
I remember
Yep.
that. Yeah.
Yeah, it's-
What was the ABV on it? It was like 18.
18 and a half. I think.
18 and a half. Bottles now. I had a bottle probably last year, I think. And it has not aged great because it's a really huge beer.
Okay.
And with a lot of different, it's got maple
lot
syrup
going
in it. It had a long fermentation cycle where Jason Yester, who used to own Trinity Brewing, and then actually worked at Josh and John's for a while. As their
Not there
production
anymore?
manager. No, he's at a company that does sod for golf courses through like mushroom and composting and things like that.
Got it.
Oh, cool.
But I reached out and he gave me sort of the in and out and the
That was a cool
details
article.
That's
on
interesting.
what went into that, because it
remember
wasn't
that
just
write-up,
like
yeah.
we're mashing in, then we
Oh,
throw the
no.
hops in, then we ferment, and then we package it. It was a 24-hour brew cycle.
Babysitting.
They had to feed the fermentation over every couple hours with more yeast
Wow.
and more sugar just to keep that fermentation going to get to that naturally high ABV.
And this is before.
And so,
this is
so when
before,
I ask it as a, are you doing it? It's more of a joke because it was such
Impossible.
it was such a labor of who you had as a brewer at the time, and Jason Yester as this
Yeah.
meticulous science nerd,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
it would
But
take.
I mean, I was heavily involved in that as
Oh,
well.
I bet too, yeah.
Meaning, because it took two people to keep it going.
It took
you know?
everybody.
Yeah.
Yeah, there was some my memories of early Bristol, because I moved here in '97 as a student, and then I must have encountered it pretty quickly. I worked at Il Vicino at the time when I was in college,
yeah.
and so Tucker was brewing for us there. Tucker later brewed Skull and Bones series for you guys, if I understand that right.
Yeah.
There's some history we could unpack, and again, this is more for the beer nerds than the average public. But I am curious about you have done some departures like that. Like Skull and Bones had to be done in the alley, right? Because you couldn't infect the main brew house. So
Yeah, it is kind of funny to think about our history, because on the one hand, and this is just comes with the territory when you're the oldest or close to the oldest brewery, and you're
Eldest.
also the biggest
elder statesmen.
in the market, then you sort of get passed off as you're not the shiny new toy or this thing. But when you look back in our history, it is interesting. I mean, the Skull and Bones was happening in the early 2000s when nobody was doing sour beers.
no, way ahead of it.
I mean, our first IPA was in 1996. I mean, so
Interestingly, those
Well,
were traditional styles that it just happened to be that no one around here knew of them. I mean, they're still traditional,
yeah.
but Americans hadn't had a sour, hadn't had an IPA. So it's a weird kind of situation. Like
Yeah, so we're not afraid to push the limits, but it's just in a certain way. These were really cool projects to do based on history.
Well, what's cool to hear about this is I don't think people realize how much you paved the way for what came after in this town. If you hadn't been walking up and down town, educating people, buying them beers, doing all these steps, yeah, I mean, it's happened in other cities too, so things would have eventually gotten here. But you built it from the inside. This didn't come in from Denver. So many things trickle down from Denver in our culture here.
Yeah,
but
yeah.
you guys,
You were
really
part
did.
of that forefront of the movement.
Yeah.
bringing craft beer to everybody and
Regular people,
and,
yeah.
and bringing it to popularity. It wasn't just like homebrewers in their
Yeah.
No,
in their
you're exactly
garage.
right. There's a whole element of people who knew about these beers, but they were brewing them themselves because they were so into it.
it's a
But
huge
the average
legacy.
person that would come in and I would talk to behind the counter, they didn't know anything. They were like, well, what kind of beers do you have? I was like, well, here you go. Let's try some hops and some, it was really cool, actually. It was
Probably
really
threw a
cool
lot of
to be
people
a part of it.
curveballs.
What?
Yeah.
Probably threw a lot of people some curveballs too.
Oh, absolutely.
But I
Go
do
ahead.
think that and we don't stop to do this very often, but when we do stop to look back over the 30 years, I mean, I think that's something that we are proud of is sort of doing our part to sort of create. I mean, our original business plan, one of the things that we wanted to do was we wanted to be the local brewery. I mean, we wanted to be really part of the community. And so I think, looking back on it and going back to your very first question about the perspective changing, I mean, we had no idea that there'd be room for 30 plus breweries, 40 plus breweries, that just wasn't in the cards at all. But we still wanted to be associated with this city and be part of this community. And I think we have, and I would argue that we still are, even though, we get passed over a lot because we're not the newest thing, right? And
Sure.
and that's fine.
Well, can we pause on that too? Because the community, you mentioned community, you have the community ale series, and that's, people love Vinatucci. There's the Shine Canyon Pinion Nut. Tell us about that. That's your volunteering essentially, right? Those profits go to these organizations.
Yeah.
That's a very direct give from Bristol. How'd that start?
Yeah, I think we've, ever since our original business plan, that was another piece of it was, it kind of goes together, right? If we say we want to be the local brewery, we want the community to support us, then we need to, it's full circle. We can't just expect one and not do the other. And that's not the way we roll anyway. So that's always been a big part of what we do. And in the beginning, that was just, if you were here in 94 to 98, and you went to any nonprofit event that was serving beer, it was most likely our beer, and it was most likely one of us serving it. And we looked at that in two different ways. One was, like I said before, we have to get people to try this beer. But the other part was, hey, we want to be part of this. And if we can't give a cash donation,
Right.
which
had
we
no
didn't
money.
have at the time, then, okay, we can give beer and increase their cash. Let's face it, if you're doing a silent auction, you got to get people lubed up a little bit, right? So if we can do something to increase their benefit, then that's great. And and then we got to a point in, I don't even remember what year it was. We said, okay, let's, and it was Michael Hannigan, it was your father that I worked with on the first one, and we said, let's figure out how we can give cash, but let's create a beer that goes with a nonprofit, that then those profits from that beer go back to that nonprofit. And it was, I'd never seen it done before, but I thought, well, this could make some sense.
So that was Pikes Peak Community Foundation, and was that Vinatucci? That was the first?
That was when the Vinatucci first came into the
Well,
Pikes Peak
I think
Community
you
Foundation.
should mention that initial meeting that Michael called some people together and said, I'll let you tell it, not me, but
Oh, well, yeah, that was
I'm
when
the talker. Tell.
when Nick and Bambi Vinatucci transferred the farm to the Pikes Peak Community Foundation. Michael was like, "What do we do with
do
this?
now?"
We're not farmers."
You know this story
This
better
is
than
like-
we
This
do.
is part of my growing up.
Yeah, right.
you know exactly.
Why didn't we have him on the show? Where is he?
But
Oh, yeah.
We'll have it.
but this idea of taking the legacy of Nick and Bambi Vinatucci, which was, as most everyone knows, the giving away pumpkins and the generosity that they showed, and sort of what do we do next? What's the next iteration of that? That was the impression I got. And so he actually just invited a bunch of people out to the farm, and he invited me, and I said, why you invited me? He said, I'm just inviting, I think his words were, creative people that have good ideas that are invested in the community. And I said, okay, I'll show up. And so that was sort of the beginning of as we were talking about, as he was looking at what the farm could be, it was clear that it was going to need funding. And so this was a way that we could sort of get involved. So we created the Vinatucci Pumpkin Ale, grew the pumpkins at the farm, I mean, that was a labor of love as well. I mean, we'd go pick them. Our employees, our kids spent those seasons picking pumpkins, and but it was really a great thing because what a lot of people lose sight of, people think about the money that was generated by these beers and that went to the nonprofits, but I think equally as important is the exposure that a nonprofit gets. I mean, that was part of our concept was let's not just, this isn't just about writing a check. There's other ways to do that, but how do we get people in Colorado Springs to learn more about people that are doing great things? Does that make sense? I mean, there's a lot of great things going on. How do we help promote that?
Well, Matt and I experienced that firsthand with Indie Give because, all the black Schwartz beer black lager you guys did for a long time. Yeah. The Give Black Lager. Yeah. There was always this, like, at least for us, working at the Independent, there was always this connection with Bristol where there was this beer that was created for Indie Give when that was a part of that. Yeah. And it really helped sort of resonate that.
It's exposure for
Well, and we liked the idea.
And the Indie Give at the time was brand new. I mean, we started. I mean, we were there in the first year doing it, and so it's a great way to. I mean, if you think about it, like, good way to expose is to put it on a beer label
and at that point, that these community ales are for a specific nonprofit, and that Indie Give one was a big one because it exposed a bunch of people
to all the others.
Because they sat in front of a bunch of buckets where they could drop their token in, and they had to sort of figure out who they actually cared about.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And so it created, you guys helped create a bunch of connections between just random community members and these nonprofits.
Yeah.
Well, and I like to call it beer philanthropy, honestly, because I feel like it's sort of this thing where beer can be more than just, I'm going to go have a beer, or I'm going to go get drunk on beer, or whatever it is, but just like, how easy is it for the average person to say, if I drink this beer, I'm actually giving back, I mean, and it's us together. It's not just Bristol writing a check or something. It's kind of this triad of the nonprofit, the customer who buys the beer, and Bristol who donates the money from the sale of the beer. And so it's all about those relationships and working on that together.
So then what's next for Bristol? I feel like you guys have you've succeeded. You've become that neighborhood brewery, that local brewery. You've given back to the community in multitudes beyond probably anyone's wildest dreams. You've got a lineup of stellar beers that are available throughout the state. Like, what's that next chapter?
Not really throughout the state, I wouldn't say. I mean, we really focus on the Pikes Peak region, honestly.
Well, but you're available in Colorado.
Yeah.
But so the question is what's next?
And that's a great question.
We don't know.
And I'm not. Yeah.
We're just
We don't
tired.
know.
Sure I can.
We don't know. I love that.
I think part of the next step is to develop our team and to get people more involved and to continue to bring the right people in and train them and that sort of thing to continue what we're doing. I mean, we all know that any industry, but particularly this industry, is not stagnant. So I mean, you can't say, you can't check a box and go, okay, we're successful and we don't have to do anything else. But I think for us, I mean, it's been a rough. This industry it's been a rough go the last 3 or 4 years, and so a lot of our projects are sort of internal that people won't necessarily see. We've got a major project going in the packaging hall right now to bring our canning in house and reconfigure all of our packaging stuff just so we can be more efficient.
Do you still have the old Italian bottler out there? Or?
No,
Okay.
we got
You
a
knew it was
different one now.
Italian.
Yeah.
That was the one at Tejon, yeah.
Yeah.
That was over here for a while too, I think.
Yeah, it was. Yeah.
With the owner's manual that was in Italian.
I've
never
seen
forget Mike
it.
saying,
Yeah.
I was a big
Amanda,
fan of
do you
the.
know anyone that speaks Italian? Because we gotta figure this.
Well, I
manual
liked
out.
the garage sales where you'd sell the low pour cases.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
With off the bottling line when they
Yeah.
were just a little bit under.
That's right.
Like, great time to go shopping at
Yes.
Bristol.
Yeah.
Load up on the low pours.
So I guess the question about like what's next is really more like you've been doing it for 30 years. What's the succession plan? Like Bristol's not going to just end at one point.
That's where.
How are you figuring out are your kids taking over? Like
No, and when you say what's next, that's really a lot of what's in our minds is sort of how do we keep this going, and how do we keep it part of the community, and how do we keep it local. I don't know that our kids. It's
not fair. It's not fair to them. I'm sorry. I shouldn't have.
No, but
called
I mean,
them out.
but
No, that's
No,
all
it-
good
it has
because
been
we get
important.
asked that a lot.
it is an
actually.
important
It's-
piece
it's
of
Yeah.
our planning, though, because if one of them was interested, we would want to facilitate that. All
course.
three of them they could probably do a better job than I've done. So I don't have that's not an issue, but I also know how hard of work it is. I mean, how just the hours, the stress, and so if you don't love it, it's not the right business to be in. You have to love it, and I would do it over again in a heartbeat. I love it, and I have loved it, but I would not put that on one of my kids that didn't love it. You know what I'm saying? If they
Right.
if they were doing it because they felt obligated or because they needed to, I just don't think they'd be successful.
Right, just
it's
because they have the
too-
last name.
It's just too
Exactly.
hard
Right.
to work.
And that's the thing is because when we started it, it was like, Mike's like, I'll brew the beer and I'll sell the beer and you can do the marketing and you can sell the beer behind the counter in growlers and it was our thing.
It'll be great. Let's try it.
Yeah, it wasn't their thing. It was our thing. It was in our 20s. This is what we wanted to do.
They weren't around at that
And
point.
they
though,
weren't
either.
around. Thank God they weren't around. I mean, yeah. But so just because, obviously, just because it was our idea and something we both wanted to do doesn't mean that they have to do it now too. So yeah, we'll see.
It still may work that way. I mean, one of them may.
You never know.
One of them is a really big beer drinker.
One
is
of them
really
is
into
really
it,
into beer, but
that's
whether
not
that-
that's not his career at this point.
One other question: when you mentioned limiting it to in-state, and as successful as you've been, I have a feeling Bristol would have done well in other places. What made you want to stay local and not go big like some of these other breweries that just aim high for national distribution or whatever?
That sounds like a lot of work.
Yeah.
I think there's multiple levels there. One is, and part of it's selfish. Part of it is I don't necessarily want to travel that much, or if I do travel, I want to do it for fun rather than work. So I don't necessarily want to go to all these other states and talk to their distributors and do all the stuff that's really required. I don't necessarily want to have our employees spread throughout, because you don't just say, hey, we're going to start selling beer in Kentucky and send it. I mean, you have to have people on the street. You have to work with distributors. And the companies that have done it, like New Belgium is a great example. They've done it well, but they invested in that. I mean, they had staff everywhere. Sam Adams, all of those national brands. That just wasn't. We just
never
weren't
been our
interested
goal.
in it. The other part of it, from a business perspective, is the further you get from home, the less your margin is. And then probably the most important piece of the whole thing is it's also harder to control the quality of the beer the further away you get. It's already hard enough to control the quality of the beer that's sitting in the cooler at a liquor store in Colorado Springs or in Fort Collins. But now all of a sudden, New Jersey, I mean, I don't even, that would be tough. So we just decided early on, and again, I never say never, but early on, well, apparently I did
You heard
say
it here
never.
first, like,
I did say
they're
never on the hazy, but
Don't believe a word he says.
yeah.
I know.
But the
Now we have it on video and audio.
But the idea also is that, I mean, we've only really always wanted to be just local and be part of this community and raise our kids here and put down roots here and all of that. And if we're in New Jersey, what does that even mean? It doesn't even make sense to me. I mean, there's local breweries in New Jersey that should have their beer on the shelves there and be, the whole thing about those local breweries that were around before Prohibition, serving their local communities, part of their local communities. That's what we're really into, So why would we sort of go to New Jersey?
Well, it's a big thing that actually comes up like in craft beer and also in the food industry is this sort of regionality of food. Here in Colorado Springs, we keep getting all these chain restaurants that come into town that are from Texas or from California. We have In-N-Out, we have Whataburger. And what it does is it lessens the appeal of those those spots. Like I remember going to
Yes.
San Diego or California and going, oh, I can have In-N-Out.
Right.
Awesome.
Right.
Or going to Dallas or Fort Worth or Austin and going, oh, Whataburger. Oh, this is so interesting.
Yeah.
And now it's just up on AirQuest. I'm like, whatever.
Yeah.
And so on the beer side of things, keeping yourself to a specific geographic area, like there's other breweries. If you think about someone like The Alchemist, Heady Topper is now available in lots of states.
Yeah.
Where it used to be you had to take a pilgrimage to
Yeah.
Vermont to drive to Stowe, Vermont.
When
wait.
Pliny the Elder became
What?
more available, it was
Well,
like,
what did you open? I was
okay.
at your house. What was it? New Glarus. That's
We
opened. and
New
you
Glarus
can
is actually
only
one of the ones that
get
still
that
does a very similar thing to
there.
what you do.
Oh,
they're
They
great.
keep all their things within Wisconsin.
Yeah,
Right.
it can
And
be
so-
done.
Can I
It-
just
it-
suggest one place though? One place has a personal tie for
Alabama?
me. Not Alabama. Close. Bristol, Virginia, Tennessee, where my mom grew up, born and raised.
Oh.
You would be in Bristol, and people would be drinking
Cheers to
Bristol.
you,
They might
Yeah.
think you're local at that point.
That's a
One
good
place, just one place, one city.
That could be a play.
There
I
is
could see
actually-
that. Yeah,
and
I
get it
could
to
see that.
Bristol. You'll kill it there.
Isn't
could
there
see
a
that.
Bristol Brewing in, where is that Bristol Brewing?
I don't know.
There's other ones.
There's another
one.
Bristol
Yeah.
Brewing and on the East Coast somewhere that we sort of have a handshake agreement like.
To not sue each other.
Yeah.
You stay on your side of the Mississippi, we'll stay on ours. Don't
and
get
there's
us
a
sued.
Bristol there's a Bristol Brewing in England, obviously,
Oh, wow.
because there's
Okay.
a Bristol England.
Well,
Yeah.
we could cease and desist them and get you into Tennessee, no problem. I'm sure. Maybe
I love it.
So I know
Not
we've
sure,
been drinking these amazing Belgian
And
beers.
they're gone. We really need to get some more beer.
I know it happens. We're gonna probably end the show. We're gonna go get more beer, but I want to ask Mike one thing, and this is one thing I've heard from other. I got some intel.
We saved the worst question
This
for
is the
last.
worst question
so
for
if
last.
you want to throw
So
beer
now,
in our faces and leave, now's the time. We still have a whole interview ahead of that.
just this is more like I heard a story that in a blind taste test between Yellow Kite and your Mexican lager from last summer, you picked Mexican lager.
I do not remember this, but
Wait, what were the
But I do
parameters of
like
this
both
blind
of them.
tasting, though?
I don't remember that either, actually. And that
so-
would be
so-
all
so
over
the-
that. If
So
that,
let me give a little.
What was
I
the
guess
goal?
the
Yeah,
only-
what's the goal of the tasting?
So here's what I had heard is that the Mexican lager was not as popular with you as the as the Yellow Kite
Well,
was.
we
Not
know
my- yeah,
that,
yeah.
yes.
Because Yellow Kite's basically one of your babies, because they're all your
yeah,
babies.
yeah.
And that the brewers were trying to convince you to bring the Mexican lager on as a more
Oh,
official.
they probably tricked me. Yeah, that
I-
wouldn't surprise me.
I think Chris tricked you, and that might have been a good thing.
Was that Chris you were talking to?
Oh yeah, definitely Chris. Sorry, Chris.
Do you need a beer? No, I'm
So
kidding.
wait, you gave Mike a question. Well, unless you want to answer that more.
No, I don't remember it, but it doesn't surprise me.
So really, like what that leads to is that one of my last questions really is. So when it comes to Bristol adding beers, stopping making beers, like who is it? You that has that final say, or do you empower your brewers to also help? Like I know you've had the Brewmaster series, but for the flagships and for things that are core Bristol. Like, are you the end all be all?
Well, ultimately, but that's just because I'm.
It's business.
Yeah, and I'm
You
the
sign
one
the
that has
checks.
to pay the
So
bills.
his
and-
name is on the door.
but no, I mean,
It's a good
I
question,
do.
though.
I think we collaborate a lot internally. So I don't necessarily just say no, absolutely not.
So glitter's not out of the question then.
Well, I mean, we'd have to talk to Chris about this, but I don't think
I
he.
don't think Chris would be into
yeah.
glitter either.
We don't
but
have to tell him.
So no, I mean, Chris and I have worked together for a long time, and even Forrester has been here for quite some time, and yeah, so we have discussions about what we're going to do. I mean, certainly, I mean this the sad part of this business is we've discontinued beers that I think are just awesome. I mean, I think of that white IPA that we did. I mean,
Oh, that
one
was
of my
great.
favorite beers that we had ever done. And I mean, it just
didn't sell 'em.
for whatever reason, it didn't resonate with people. And
Probably the
and
name I came up with.
I don't know.
You know,
I-
you just- it's both-
it just broke my heart. I'm like, okay, can I have the last few cases at least? You know,
Could that be part of a 30th though? A Mike's favorite.
it could be. Yeah,
Not
And
best selling,
we
but
will-
just
we will
Mike's
bring
favorite series
We will
of
bring
a
some
That's a
little
good idea.
limited run of like, I love this. You guys didn't quite buy it, but maybe try it again.
Screw you. These are
it's
my
a few
favorites.
years later.
Exactly. The
Yeah.
Screw You series.
So I mean, I think
like
to,
that.
to answer your question, ultimately, I guess I am, but I don't like to consider myself as walking in saying, "This is what we're going to do.
Right,
This is
so
what we're
the-
going to do."
the flip side of that
when
is-
Chris, like the reason Chris was trying to sell me on the
Mexican lager?
is because that was something that Chris really wanted to do.
Oh, yeah.
and I wasn't going to stand in the way, and it was a good beer. I mean, so
I remember it. It was good.
Yeah.
It was on tap.
It's
It was-
coming
So
back.
I mean, there are times when like the pub staff says, "Oh, we want to do a short run of coconut flavored whatever," and I'd be like, "Okay, I mean, if that's what you want to do, that's fine."
So that leads my
It
sort of my next
happens.
question is like with the large Braucon brew house you have right now, how easy is it to do small batch stuff? Do you have to run a whole batch of something and then like
no, that thing's
pargile
designed.
it out, or
That thing's designed to do some smaller batches. In fact, Chris and I have just been working on even doing batches smaller than it's designed for. So we have some flexibility there. Ultimately, it'd be nice to have a little
little pilot system?
pilot system that we
But
can
that's
play
essentially
around
the
with,
only
but-
that's the only brew system here. You don't
Yeah,
have a pilot.
yeah.
Okay.
But that being said, I mean, when you're talking about adjuncts and doing stuff like that, you can take you take some beer off and
Right.
do something.
Right.
So we
Like
do
the
have
Coconut
some
Warlock that we did.
have some flexibility, or barrel aging, or some of that stuff. So we do have that flexibility, and I don't. It's not my intention to define everything that we do, but it is I think my job and Amanda's as well from a branding perspective to sort of kind of at least do it within the framework of what we stand for.
Right. It needs
you
to
know,
match Bristol.
Rather,
We can't
yeah,
be
rather
anything
than,
but ourselves. And that is
Yeah.
one thing from the very beginning. We've just always been ourselves. I mean, how can you be anything else, right? But all the things that felt important to us and all the things that seemed to kind of just make sense to us in our brains is what we've been doing all along. So what else can you do?
Be yourself.
That's exactly
Be Bristol.
I mean, to a fault, like that's how you are. Like that's, and that may be why people like are like, Bristol.
Yeah.
Like, but it's like,
Yeah.
it's like, oh, they're not doing a cheesecake stout this year. I'm like, oh well,
Yeah. And that's fine. I
But
mean,
also
somebody else
should,
will.
But also, should they?
Yeah.
Like at this point, like if you came out with something like cheesecake glitter stout, someone might be like, all right,
That's probably got poison
What
in it.
is
I'm not
going
drinking
on?
that.
Right. Yeah.
They don't
Yeah.
want me to actually have that.
Yeah.
Is
Yeah,
there something we
it's fun.
haven't asked you yet tonight that you want us to tell the viewers, tell the listeners, anything we didn't cover about the business, anything else you want to say?
There's one thing that I have, and we would have gotten into it, I'm sure, because it's a big part of what we've done. But when we start looking back over 30 years, I think that one of the things that we're really proud of, and that was a unique opportunity for us, was to be able to do this project, to be able to take this old school and to create what we've created here, and somebody brought up the word legacy. I'm not sure I'm ready for legacy yet, but
too late. Yeah, I mean, like,
The succession
But-
plan
but-
is already.
30
Not
years.
that
But-
old.
I would like to think that this project would be part of that when that happens, because I do think that if you look back, and you guys were in town at that point, 2012, 2013. This was a nutty project. I mean, Joe and I we're nutty people, and Amanda. I mean,
Joe's
But
the nuttiest.
Joe's
nuttier
for certain
than
is
I am,
nutty.
but-
No, totally.
Listen to
He was the
episode
first
2 for
one to
more
tell
on
anyone.
that.
But we
Yeah,
love
yeah.
him so much because he is
Yeah.
so creative.
No,
and
Bryce and Edie Crawford and I co-wrote the cover story for that. So I was
oh, I
very
remember that. Yeah.
intimately
Yeah.
in touch with you all during that period.
Yeah.
And we had to divide it between 3 reporters because it was too big for one of us to do. It was like, let's just break this up. You talk to Mike, you talk to Joe, whatever. And then we're like, how does this work again? There's a line down the middle and the liquor license, all this stuff. But
that
it was
was
so
rough.
ambitious and so
It's so
different.
much easier now,
And
though.
what's weird too for us at the time, we weren't conceiving of it as a food hall. We didn't think of it that way because then
That's not what it was at
Well,
first.
it wasn't. Yeah, but like
yeah.
then we had Quaddy Open, we got the well or whatever. And now, in retrospect, it's like, wait a minute, this was sort of the OG food hall when you really get down to it, because
we didn't know to
call it that.
Yeah.
It was like it happened in real time. So, in retrospect, I want to give you that title, the OG food hall, and the second oldest continuous brewery in Springs. So, back to that word legacy.
Well, the one thing I wanted to say is that, the thing about that I love about the two of you.
Oh, stop. You've just had beer.
no, we're done.
Just enough.
All right,
we'll
that's
just
it.
cut it
That's
off,
it.
everybody.
I know,
Amanda's
all,
getting
folks.
sappy.
this
We're
will
out.
get included. This won't be edited out.
No, it won't be. We don't edit anything.
We're too lazy for that and too busy. It's all
Matt's
going
not gonna
in.
edit anything out of this.
I put a mess up in the
It's not gonna do that, the work.
It's done.
No, but what I love about the two of you, besides that you were just like hustling and making it work, what you guys are doing, but it's obvious that you guys really love this community. You know, I mean, you've traveled, you know what's going on outside of here, but you're not one of those people that's like, Colorado Springs, blah, 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 whatever. Oh, I should be in Denver or Boulder or Fort Collins. Colorado Springs is a great town, and you guys are in the thick of it, and you really are supporting what's going on here, and I really love that. And to me, as far as how that relates to Bristol, is that I just am nothing but grateful for how we were originally received here when we started. And it wasn't all that long after all of that proposition, what was the number? I don't remember, but the bad kind of press that Colorado Springs had.
Yeah.
And people saying, Colorado Springs, why would you start a brewery there? We have been received so wonderfully from the very beginning, people seeking us out, and I'd answer the phone at the original brewery, and it'd be like, where are you? I can't find you, but I hear you're brewing craft beer. And, just people coming out to support what we were doing, and we've received nothing but support for so many years. And this is just a great place to live and have a business, and to be and to try to do what we can to make it even better, and work with all the people that are here that also love it. So, I appreciate all that's going on in Colorado Springs, but also what you guys are doing too. I mean, it's worthy of our esteem.
Well, I would agree with that. I remember back in the day when people used to badmouth, and maybe they still do. I don't know. I don't listen to them, but we had some friends, and they're like, "Oh, nothing happens in Colorado Springs." I said, "Wait a minute. Are you saying that nothing happens in Colorado Springs? Are you saying you're not doing anything in Colorado Springs? Because you can be part of the solution, or you can just bitch about it." And that's where we took the attitude was, we're here. Let's do something. Let's make it happen. Incidentally, they moved to Fort Collins and probably had the same problem there. But anyway, we appreciate what you guys do to kind of keep things rolling. So.
Well, I mean, part of the reason we've enjoyed being part of the Springs is because of businesses like yours that give a shit about the Springs. I mean, pardon my French, but that's there's a lot of businesses that come and go, but you guys you're like, we're putting roots down here. We are invested in the community. We're invested in this town for the town it is, not for the town we want it to be.
Right.
Right.
And
Exactly.
that I think is the hardest part, is that, there's a lot of these people that are, people are excited about In-N-Out, Whataburger, even Illegal Pete's from Boulder is on table. People are super excited about it, but be excited about what we have here locally, organically.
Yeah, and the people that
Yeah,
are
and that-
doing great things here. I mean, that's one of the things that when we started Karma Hour, it was all about, let's shed light on some of these great nonprofits that are doing some great things in town. We're all in there trying to make it just great, and there's a lot of great material to work with. This is a great town.
Yeah.
So to sort of wrap the whole episode up, but also give a little bit of a final piece. Where do you see Bristol going in the next 10 years? You're at 30 years. If we sat down with you in 10 years, because we're going to be here, and you're going to be
We're
here.
going to be dead.
No, you won't be. You won't be dead. We're all going to be here in 10 years. But what's going to be the storyline for Bristol over the next 10 years?
Yeah, that's a great question, because things, and it seems like COVID even just accelerated things, but things change so fast. It's hard to really know. But I think that ultimately what I would hope is consistent is that we're still here, number one, and that we're still following the vision that we had, which is to build community, create quality beer, to be part of this community. And so what that really looks like, I'm not sure. But that will always be sort of the core piece of it. And so I'm kind of as interested as you are to be what conversation will that be in 10 years.
For those of you watching right now, like take a snapshot right now, and then we'll see you in 10 years.
Well,
Exactly.
I'd like to
I
just
mean-
say, please don't die. Be here in 10 years, Amanda. And also, thank you for your kind words. I grabbed this because I was like, I'm not crying. You're crying. I was just going to do a
crying
little
over there.
dab or two. But
We have it on camera. It's all
But
right.
you guys
Yeah.
are a rare breed. You
Well,
really are.
I'm guilty of Bristol is such a stalwart in town. I'm guilty of sometimes going so long without returning because it's like, oh, it's always there. It's like
You know it's going to be good.
it's the
you know it's going to be
flagship
quality.
thing,
Yeah.
and like
Yep.
I'm always out. Oh, I'll try the new thing or this open or whatever. And I think that says something too about on the consumer side. Like you are so ever present here. You guys are on almost all the taps. Beehive is so popular. Lab won, the Indie Best of Awards for so many years in a row. It was just annoying. We're on the oh, it's Bristol again. Of course, it's Bristol again, right? Like you're too good. It's like you're already going to be on that best of list. There's no question. So I don't know. For me, it's really nice to be here tonight to reflect on, interviewing you, 10, 12 years ago about this opening, before that about some other story, being here and watching this place take shape. I was in this building before it opened, walking it with you. Just all that's happened, again, it's been 30 years. We've only been a part of that with you for, let's say, half of that or something, a little longer. But I don't know, if we still had beer in our glasses, I would just toast you to,
Sorry, I got the yeast.
the amazing 30 years you've had. Congratulations. It's
thank you.
huge.
Thank you.
And,
Thank you so
we're
much.
honored to have you on the show. Is there anything
We're
else you
honored
wanna-
to be able to be asked because this is awesome.
And whatever the future
And I mean, we could
holds,
go on
it's-
for another 2 hours, so let's do it
I
again
know,
sometime.
I know, y'all are
That's the hardest part. We're always like
Yeah,
looking
I
at each
know.
other.
We're
Is
like,
it done?
we're like,
Are we
all
done?
right, we gotta go.
We're
I
out.
know.
Done.
But
Hey,
it's really, it's
like
really
I said,
fun.
we'll still be here. We'll do this again.
All right, fair. We'll do it again.
Yeah, let's reconvene around the anniversary. Middle of June. We can maybe even